The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Janet. So, Janet, if you can tell me when and where you were born, and if you can describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. The floor's yours.
Well, I was born on May 13th in North Platte, Nebraska, which most people don't ever hear anybody that's coming from Nebraska because it's kind of an obscure state. But I lived there for about 6 years till I was 6 years old. And then my family moved to Laramie, Wyoming, which is where the University of Wyoming is. And that also was just like North Platte. There's only about 25,000 people that live there.
Well, Laramie's quite famous, isn't it, in sort of cowboy terms?
Oh, in cowboy terms, yes, it is. In football terms, too, it made some history there, too. But, and I grew up there in Steamboat, Colorado. And then my parents, when I was a senior in high school, they moved to Minnesota. They were both Minnesotans, so they thought they wanted to go back away from the mountains. And they only lasted 4 years there. And they left about three of us in Minnesota going to the University of Minnesota. And so my parents went back to Colorado. And from there, I went to New York, which was...
Whoa. You're racing ahead now. So
yeah, which was quite a shock to my system.
Let's drag you back a little bit. Let's look at what was it like in your first school and the area where you actually grew up.
Oh,
what was that like?
Well, if I describe it, it was very rural. There weren't many kids in my class. Maybe there were 20. I don't consider that a lot, but it was, you knew everybody in town. You knew all the kids there. And I just happened to be one of those children that was always protecting the underdog. So I will say that about my childhood. If somebody was being bullied or somebody wasn't being allowed to play, I was the first one there saying, no, this person gets to play and stop doing that. So I was always about the underdog and always in service. That was part of me. I rode in rodeos as a kid. It's something that is hard for people who meet me now can believe because I'm kind of more of a city person, but I did, and I loved the country, and I still love animals. And I'm actually certified in equine and canine acupressure, kinesiology, and massage just because I wanted to and because it's something I can offer animals.
Well, we can come on to that, but let's have a look at some rodeo then. So what were you actually riding in rodeo? You surely wasn't a bull rider.
Oh no, I barrel raced.
You barrel raced.
I was a barrel racer, and I did try to rope calves a couple times, but I was pulled out of the saddle, and I said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm done." But when I was 14, the biggest time for me that I remember as a kid. Most exciting time was when my friend and I decided that we were going to break her horse. One of her horses had a baby, and now it was time that we would go through. We were reading a book on how to break a horse, so we went through the steps, and we actually did break the horse. But we also fell off many times. I was bucked off, and
so
I have to say this.
Like breaking in a bronc, was it?
Oh, it was. It's like breaking a bronco, but you do it slowly, and that's kind of more the beauty of it is that you get them used to the saddle, you get them used to everything. It's a process. But I still, to this day, am pretty amazed that I never broke a bone falling off a horse. I never did. But it brings me great joy. It was a great part of my childhood, spending time with this particular friend and doing all the things that we did on this ranch slash farm. It was pretty fun, pretty magical, including I have to say, I had to work for my keep there. Her father would make us work, and I would have to lift bales. I would have to take eggs from chickens, and I would have to help with bringing in the cows to be milked. I had to do it all. So,
Was that
but
just so you could get a ride on a quarter horse to go and do some barrel
yes,
racing?
yes, just so I could ride on a horse. That's all it was so that I get to ride, because I just had this love for them. I actually have love for cows too. For some reason, I really love cows, but horses were my thing. Horses are great healers, and they always amaze me because they don't understand how large they are compared to us. They are pretty gentle.
So let's have a little bit more look at the rodeo side of it. So was it like a big rodeo that comes to town every sort of so often, like the pro rodeos?
Oh no, this is like
I had a pro rodeo rider on the show a few weeks ago.
No, it's not like that. I did the county ones. I mean, by the time I stopped, I think I was like 16 and a half, maybe 17, because we had moved to Minnesota. So I did it for a while. I think from like 13 and 14 was when I started really heavily riding horses, when we started breaking the horses, when we started doing all that.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
So what was the school like? So you saw, what was your, did you go to middle school, or was it sort of junior high, or?
Oh, I went to junior high, and I have to say this, even in grade school and junior high, I'm about 13. I'm a little bit of about a year, almost a year and a half behind my brother, but he was held back, so he was a year ahead of me. And he had a photographic memory. So I had to follow him, which was a hard act to follow. So they're all thinking, she's going to be as bright as my brother John was. And here I come, and I'm dyslexic. And at the time, they didn't know what dyslexia was, right? And plus I'm out in the middle of nowhere, so they're really not going to know what it was like. And even though my dad knew that my thought process was smart and everything was smart, my parents couldn't understand why I had such a hard time with reading and writing and how it followed through. And through time, I found a system that worked for me so that I could read. My comprehension level was really high. Even in regular reading, when I had dyslexia, my comprehension was really high. It just took me a lot longer than anyone else. It probably took me 3 times as long to do my
homework. I know exactly where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it's
I had the same problem.
Oh, well, I always say this, Einstein was dyslexic, so we have good company.
Absolutely. And Henry Winkler, he's a champion. He's a champion for it.
Well,
I
learned techniques that really helped me as I got older, that translated into work later on when I was working. That really helped me.
So moving on then, so you moved about a little bit. So what was your high school like?
Well, high school was tough. I mean, I was still, I literally retreated to the ranch with my friend, because I think high school is really a difficult thing for a lot of kids. But I had to also, I talked about my brother, but I had to follow my sister, who was a track star. Everything she did athletically, she was excellent at. And here I come along, and I'm the animal lover. And I was a great athlete. I did track too, but I fell back to just riding in horses. I was happy. I ended up taking voice lessons, classical voice, and I was successful with that. That's kind of where I went to plays. I was in a lot of plays growing up. singing was my thing. And so I did that as well.
So what
And
sort of plays were you putting on? Was it school
like,
plays, or did you get into a sort of
no, they were,
amateur dramatics?
oh no, they were school plays. Like we would do Brigadoon, they were musicals that I would be in. And then I was also in the chorus, but it was something that I really, really enjoyed. And I was in a couple competitions, regional competitions singing. And because I sang classical, I was a soprano. And my older brother also, my mom would send us to the university and we would take our lessons there. And I continued for a while. So it was fun, and then I entered my mom entered me into the Miss Teen pageant when I was 17. That was quite the experience. Everybody was hoping I wouldn't fall off the stage, but I was good and sang for my talent, and that was another great experience I had as a child. Or I say a young adult, because you're starting to go into adulthood.
Yeah. So was that like Miss World? You sort of go on and all the rest of it, and then you have to say a
Yeah, but on a
speech
much
and
lower level. On a much
yeah.
lower level.
So did you want world peace,
Yeah, world peace. Yeah,
or
you did.
or were you a
I have to
bit
tell
like
you,
Congeniality,
I
Sandra
have to tell
Bullock?
you, they did have those. They did give those awards out, and they did actually have a test that we had to take on world affairs and all of that. Yeah, you did have to know it. So
Wow,
it's kind of interesting. Yeah, you're taking me back because I don't think about these things anymore. But you're
that's
taking
what
me
it's
way
all
back.
about.
I have to
It's
think
important
about.
to reflect on where you've come from and what it was
Yeah,
like at that time in history.
yeah,
Because, I mean, future generations can look back at this and see what people like us were doing in this time history.
yes, yes.
So,
Well, I
yeah,
can
this,
say this. One of the biggest moments as a teenager that I remember was when Vietnam was announced that it was over. I was in history class and I was in junior high, and I still remember that.
cool. When was that?
That
That
was a
was,
big moment. That was a big moment, like for me, national, worldwide. This was like really huge, and it's funny
yeah,
that I was in my history class, but everything stopped at that moment. Everything. I just remember it was almost like the whole class just stopped.
yeah. What was that? It started in the 60s, didn't it? It ended in the 70s,
Yeah,
Vietnam.
yeah, yeah.
Was it 73, 74 did it finish?
I no. Well, I just remember them announcing. I was like in eighth grade, so I might even been in seventh grade when that happened. And I just remember because my mom was worried a little bit about my older brother having to serve. She talked about it. So it was something that was in my family, like people talked about.
Yeah. So did you have conscription then for guys going to Vietnam, or was it just
That's the only
volunteers?
thing. At the time, I think they had a draft going. They did have a
Yeah.
draft going. My mom thought that he might be drafted. Yeah. Yeah.
And he wasn't. He got away with
No,
it.
you know what? He wouldn't have been able to serve actively because he was legally blind. He had to use glasses at the time.
All right.
So he was legally blind, so I don't know. But he did serve in ROTC as because he wanted to be a doctor, so he did go into ROTC.
Uh-huh. So moving on then. So your high school. So you've done your junior high. So high
Well,
school.
that was part of high school too. That was
That
part
was
of
all part
my
of high
high
school.
school was when I did the musicals. So I did musicals in high school. Um, I I had when I moved to Minnesota, I thought it was going to be hard, but I made the greatest friends, and so it turned out to be well. And from there, I went to college.
Uh-huh.
Um, so
So what was
it
your
was
majors at college then?
marketing. My major was marketing, and
That's
I
different
went
from
to,
rodeo riding
yeah, well, I went to South
and
Dakota
singing.
State first. I went to South Dakota State first for 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of Minnesota, because the brother that we spoke about, that had a photographic memory, when he was in camp for ROTC, which for those people who may not know what ROTC is, the military has where they will pay for your education if you serve in the military. And part of that is you have to go through training in the summer of your junior and senior year in college. And that's where he was at.
Yeah.
And when he was in the boot camp, he ended up having a total aneurysm or a stroke. And he was totally paralyzed. He couldn't talk. He couldn't move. And so after 7 days, he could only say 7 words. And and we were very close he and I were close as teenagers growing up. And so now he was coming home after 3 months, and he couldn't walk without a cane. His right hand was not usable really. So he had severe effects of the stroke, but his photographic memory was still there. And when he was in the hospital, the doctors told him just focus on getting ready, and he would point to words and say, "I'm going to be you one day." And so so I came home from South Dakota State and went to the University of Minnesota, and we all pitched in. We took him to speech therapy because he had to learn how to speak all over again. He started taking classes because he wanted to get back to graduate, because he went to Colorado State University, and he wanted to graduate so he could go to medical school. So after 1 year of being out, he's kind of a miracle. They did write about him. After 1 year, he was back in college his senior year. And then the year later, he got into the University of Minnesota Medical School. And I will say this today, I think he's semi-retired now, but he did at one point was in the top 100 neurologists in the world. So he found his way, he found to leave his mark, but we all pitched in, and it was pretty difficult. I think it was very rough on my mom, because both my parents worked, and she had to spend a lot of time with him. And I have a brother, and I have a younger brother and an older sister, and we all had to pitch in and help with.
So I guess his military career would have ended as well.
Yes.
Did they still honour and pay for his tuition, or did they sort
No.
of just mug him off?
No, he didn't get it paid for, but he's a very resourceful person, and he got a lot of grants. He was given, because of what happened to him, and being now special needs, and being in a certain circumstance, he ended up getting quite a few grants. So he actually got most of his education free.
So let's go back to you then. So you went into marketing.
Well, I wouldn't say I did go into marketing, because in the end, I had to help with money, and my family and my parents. So I couldn't there were no good paying marketing jobs. So I actually, at the time, Northwest Orient Airlines was hiring.
So why did you take a degree in marketing then? What was the thinking behind that?
It was, I didn't have a thought. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea of what I was going to do when I got out of school. I had none. I mean, I had several jobs. I started working from the time I was 13, well, probably 11, delivering papers with my brother. By the time I was 13, I was detasseling corn out in the cornfields, getting paid $5 an hour, which was great money back then. And I had always had a job. My mom, we had to have jobs. I mean, I didn't mention this before, but we lived on the poverty level. So I had to have a job. And so now my brother's ill, you know, he had what happened to him, and my parents couldn't afford supporting anyone. And so now it was up to, my younger brother was still in high school. My older sister, she was on her way doing something else. And so I was there. And so I knew everybody needed money. And so I went and I became a flight attendant to earn the money. And at the time, when I first started, it was $16 an hour, or I mean, $16,000 a year. But I moved to New York. Remember I said I went to New York?
Yeah.
I moved to New York. And when I moved to New York, all of a sudden my pay jumped. After 6 months of flying, my pay jumped to $40,000 a year. And now, if you think way back then, that was a lot of money. And I flew all over the world, and I did it for about 3 years. But it helped everybody out. It helped everybody out. But I only lasted in New York. I commuted. I only lasted in New York for 1 year, barely a year. It was overwhelming for me. And so I ended up moving to Boston and just commuting and taking my flights out of New York when I had to work. And then eventually got married and quit that, and actually went into working with an engineering company, drafting the hard, how would we say, the inside, the hard drives, but I would draft them on paper. Back in the day, I used to draft out every, you know, now it's done a whole different way, but we would,
So
I would sit at
you've
a
got CADs doing it, haven't you?
Yeah, so I trained in a whole different area, and I even went into then leasing equipment was a huge thing, and I got involved in doing the spreadsheets for leasing equipment, and so I went into a whole different career at that point, and that's when I was first married, and eventually we moved from Boston to Dallas, and from Dallas I ended up going into the loan officer training program at a bank, and I hated it. I hated banking. I hated it. There's just, and what we were doing was we were lending money for the builders, and so I would have to make sure that if the builder took money out for the roof, that they were actually putting the roof on and all of this, and I just did not like it. And a law firm was looking, Jones Day Revis and Pogue, which is one of the, I think it's the first or second largest law firm in the United States. They were looking for somebody who had banking experience in real estate to be a paralegal. So I thought, oh, I think I'm going to do that and see if law is what I was like. So I was still trying to find myself. I was trying to find what I wanted to do, what I was good at. And so I went in that, and I really enjoyed working with the team that I worked with and the partners that I worked with there. And it was quite fun. And they really treated me like I was a first year law legal associate, you know, lawyer. And eventually, I think we lived there maybe 2 years. And after that, we moved to Chicago. And once we moved to Chicago, I ended up working for Kirkland and Ellis, and they are like also one of the largest law firms. And there I ended up working in nonprofit and the tax area, and also mergers and acquisition. I was kind of worked in all three, but I edited with Marty Ginsburg, who was the late Chief Ginsburg's husband for the Supreme Court. I worked with him and a partner named Jack Levin on the mergers and acquisition law that's used in CCH today even. It was the 1986 law, and I edited it with them. That's why I said I overcame that dyslexia. I started editing, and I did all that work, did nonprofit taxes, and also did investigative work of what somebody could put a price on invisible assets of a company and how you value those. And so I did that and ended up they offered to put me through law school, but I looked at how many hours they expected you to work. Like they expected you to work until like, when I did the mergers and acquisition, I started at 7 a.m. in the morning and I didn't get done until midnight. And I would do this day after day after day. And I
That's
was like,
taking liberties with your good nature, surely.
yeah, I was like, yeah,
Surely the remuneration was astronomical to do that sort of work.
yeah. I was like, nah, I don't think that this is like something that I'm gonna do. And then they offered me my same job. We ended up moving to Greenwich, Connecticut, and they offered me my same job. But at that point, I was expecting, I was having my second child and my third child, and I was like, I don't think so. And so then, so then I literally became a mom, but yet did nonprofit work all the time. And in that, I started investigating what I would say the quantum world. And for me, that opened all the doors up for me in where I am today. I started reading books that had to do with how we see different light energy and how our eyes take in 95% of the light our bodies use, and our skin only takes 5% of that. So I started investigating different things on my own, even though, and the way I became like this kind of marathon runner in the process too. So I found all these different things to do. And then eventually, as my kids got older, we moved to Boston. And when we were in Boston, I became a single mom. And it was pretty tough. My kids were young. I think the youngest was 9. So they were young. My oldest was starting to go into middle school, or she was in towards the end of middle school. And the other one the middle one was in middle school, because I have 3 children, two daughters and a son. And I can remember I was at that point, I was helping Tufts Medical Center raise funds. It was an inner city hospital. It's connected to Tufts University, but it's still an inner city hospital servicing all the underserved people. And so I was helping them. And I also became chairman of the board of a nonprofit that helped homeless women get a better education to break the cycle with their children. So now as you're listening, now you're hearing I'm back in service to others as I was as a kid. And this is really important that I want your audience to understand how we carry what we are as a child to what we are as an adult. Because I always felt for the underserved. So I would always help the underserved. And so I started still expanding in my energy work. I became a Reiki master. I got certified in acupressure, kinesiology, massage for equines and canines. I was now looking into everything else, and just enjoying expanding into it and enjoying what I was doing in service of other people. And then before long, everyone was attaching to me because I got a large sum of money out of the divorce, and everybody was attaching to me for my money. And I couldn't say no. And so I was excited because I could give to individuals and nonprofits alike, but I couldn't say no. And then after a little bit of a time, my financial advisor, who was with a well-known financial institution, had made an investment outside the scope of the investment firm and lost a lot of money. And now here I am in arbitration. And all I can think of is, I'm going to lose this money. I know I'm going to lose this money. And because I knew the statistics of arbitration. Now, in the end, he was disbarred. The company was fine. His partner fined. But sure enough, I only got 10% of what I lost. So now I'm sitting back going, okay, I understand the energy or the quantum physics, because Einstein said, match the frequency with the reality that you wish for, and you can't help but bring it to you. That's not philosophy, that's physics, because you're putting the energy out there, and they've proven that by molecules and everything that's happened in it. And they've even proven that the biochemical effects of our brains functioning shows that our very thoughts affect our cells. So now I understand that part, but I'm like, there has to be something more than this. So I started studying epigenetics.
So
And
just clarify, quantum physics is like time travel.
it can be. It can be,
That's
absolutely. It can
part
be.
of quantum.
It can be. As a matter of fact, you can quantum jump. Everybody quantum jumps actually at some point. And just so people understand what it is, we are energy ourselves. And so I can tell somebody it's kind of simplistic like this. If you stub your toe in the morning and you say, this whole day is going to be awful, and it rolls out, you put the energy out there. It's just like if you think you're going to get a cold, you feel like you're getting a cold, but you have something important that's coming down the pike that you need to attend to, and you go, I can't get this cold now, I can get it later. You don't get the cold, but you've given it permission to come later. So it comes later. Just don't give it permission to come, but we do
You're still
this.
going to get
And
it.
yeah, we do this. And this is the part that people need to understand is that we're energetic beings. And our thoughts, our very thoughts, affect our very cells. That is part of quantum physics. So you're absolutely right. And I would say to somebody, you know how you drive down the street and you've been down that street probably 100 times, and all of a sudden you notice something you didn't notice before? Most likely you've quantum jumped. But I have bigger ways to tell people how to quantum jump. Quantum jumping is like when we change our belief. So if you change your belief system from being fear-based to be safety, security, and confidence. And now you have that safety, security, and confidence in your cells, in your energy field. Well, your trajectory, if you were fear-based, would have gone this way. And now you're going another way. You're going a whole different way. And that's what happens is your trajectory can no longer go the path of fear-based. It's going to go the path of safety, security, and confidence. And so this has a lot to do. This has a lot to do with epigenetics too, because epigenetics says that it is the imprints that are passed down from our ancestors to our parents, and our parents pass it to us from the time we're born to about 7 years old. And the reason why it affects us from the time we're born to 7 years old is because we're in theta state. So we're like a sponge. We absorb everything, right? And after that, it's society and anything catastrophic that happens to us that is going to decide how we're going to live. Now, I went down that rabbit hole because I wanted to understand. And remember, I spoke about me being in service to others as a child. Well, my father was a Lutheran minister. My father came from 8 generations of ministers who signed up to be economically challenged, who signed up to help the underserved, and who never had money to manage. Now, go back to what I said about me and what happened with the money. Yeah. So it was imprinted in me. So I had to go. So I was in the process of learning every technique that could detangle the imprinting. Because while I say this, it was courageous and it was what they wanted for their life. It wasn't what I wanted for me. And so I thought, I need to figure this out. So I started studying Neuro-Linguistic programming, ThetaHealing, eye movement integration or EMDR, hypnotherapy. I mean, I started getting certified in everything that I could to understand our subconscious and conscious mind and how our left cortex and right cortex can be brought into a whole brain state on a new belief so that we can usher out the old and bring in the new. And I spent, about 14 years doing that and came up with the program that I have today. But it was a process for me to understand and detangle the parts that were self-limiting beliefs. And I'm going to add this. This is why if people think about lottery winners and they say, why can't they hang on to the money? It's because their money consciousness level is at such a low rate, because they're programmed that maybe $100 is a lot of money instead of $100 million are a lot of money. And so therefore it's easier for them to lose the money, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, kind of. Money goes to money, doesn't it? So what's neuro-linguistic? Is that sort of knowing other languages?
Neuro-linguistic, well, neuro refers to the brain and the functioning of the brain. Linguistic is how we communicate. So we communicate only, believe it or not, 7% of our communication is words. 93% is our body language, is the inflection in our voice, is our eye movement, because even our eyes mean different things, how they move. And so when you take all that communication into account, you can figure out by the way somebody's talking to you, their body movements, everything, basically what their program is. So when somebody comes to visit me, the first thing I say to them is, how can I assist you? And I listen to their words, I write them down, and I watch their body movements, and I just listen, because it can tell me what their program is and what they're in front of me for.
I mean, that's a skill in itself, isn't it? Listening.
Yeah, listening is a skill in itself. My kids would say that I'm still learning that, but for work.
Well, you never listen to your kids anyway. I mean, especially when they're dripping, when they're having a moan about something, you don't listen.
Yeah, mine are pretty great.
So that's kind of where you are now, then.
Yeah, so I a while back, several years back, I created Reprogram for Success. It's based off of basically using 4 different techniques. I do use other techniques as well, depending on the client, but basic 4 and neuro-linguistic programming, ThetaHealing if it's somebody that's a meditator. Eye movement integration is used for trauma, and then PSYCH-K, which crosses your left cortex with your right cortex and brings you into a whole brain state. Now, these are all scientifically proven that they work. I have other techniques. I use hypnotherapy also in everything. So there's just different techniques depending on what the client needs, who's in front of me. It's always an assessment. But PSYCH-K, I have to say, is used in every single session. And it's because what it does is I move the old belief out. So if it's fear, I can move the old belief out using neuro-linguistic programming and ThetaHealing and eye movement integration. And I even can move in a new belief. But I like to double clamp it down with something called PSYCH-K. And PSYCH-K was invented 30 years ago by Rob Williams. And it is a process of literally crossing your left cortex with your right cortex, bringing you into a whole brain state on a new belief. And if anybody knows who Dr. Bruce Lipton is, he wrote The Biology of Belief, which came out, I think, about 20 years ago. And he won awards for that book. And it was talking about the subconscious mind. In the back of that book, he says that PSYCH-K is the most efficient, quickest way to change a self-limiting belief into a self-enhancing belief. And he attributes this PSYCH-K to why he was able to finish writing the book and why he has great relationships today. And I know he still does PSYCH-K today. He was speaking on Lewis Howe a couple months ago and kind of referred to it. So. But they only have 35 teachers in the world. There are quite a few of us that are advanced facilitators and people that are facilitators, but only 35 teachers out in the world. It's pretty limited.
So it's a bit like changing attitudes and behaviour in somebody.
Yes.
I was doing that. Psychological
Yes.
operations, we called it.
Yeah.
PSYOPs.
Yeah.
Propaganda.
It
I mean,
actually
I
is.
don't know whether you've seen just recently, but our government has been caught out lying to the population, trying to keep us in a state of fear for the last 3 years. And they've actually just been caught out with a whole raft of text messages that they've been sending on WhatsApp. So, yeah.
Oh wow. I no,
So,
I did not know that, but everything's a program, and this is what I would say to even your listeners. There's always an agenda. There's always if you watch the same news channel over and over again, you're only going to get their viewpoint, and that programs us. I actually tell people, read the headlines, read the news more than watch the news. But everything's a program. So you really have to sit down and ask yourself, where did I get that belief? Is that my belief? Is that my parents' belief? Is that society's belief? Is that the government's belief? What is my belief? And especially if it's something that you believe strongly, I would ask yourself where you got that belief, because it will open the door to where it originally generated from, and you can ask questions.
I think that's the key there, is asking the question.
Yes.
And just having a look at and research yourself. So many people just accept what's on the news, and quite often, you're right. The news channels have a narrative. They're feeding something, or they're following the money. So, from that point of view, you need to look beyond what the news is telling you and do your own research into whatever to seek the truth, because you're not going to get it from the news.
No, I actually say be a student of your life, and start asking the questions. Start asking, do I believe that? Do I not believe that? What is truth to me? And understand, I think when we talk about the quantum world, I think people think they're just stuck with the life that they're stuck with. And I would challenge everybody listening today to every day say, everything's working out to my advantage. Say that every day, everything's working out to my advantage. Everything's working out to my advantage. And see how much in that day works out to your advantage. I think we spend a lot of our time in negative energy, negative thoughts. And so we bring our quantum field into that, and we draw those things to us. And the more we're able to say, everything's working out to my advantage, that even when you see something that doesn't look so great, all of a sudden you're going to realize it worked out to your advantage. And at first you're going to think, well, maybe, and then it's like, nope, worked out to my advantage. And it's all an energy that we send out there. And there's another thing that somebody once said, which was abundance. I'm so grateful that now that abundance is flowing to me easily and effortlessly, continuously on a daily basis. It's all in how we communicate to ourselves. And if people understood the power of the mind and the heart, because your heart has a more powerful brain than your mind, than your actual brain. Our heart has a brain too, that and has more energy, that you would find that you could change the trajectory of your life pretty easily.
It's also, I think, important to have your glass half full instead of half empty.
Yes.
Taking that positive mental attitude forward, I guess that's a big part of what you do, is encourage people to have that positive attitude towards life. And I think that's
program that.
You can turn anything round to your advantage to make yourself better. and I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I think attitude is everything.
Yeah.
Somebody once told me gratitude should be your attitude. Gratitude is the attitude, and gratitude, compassion, love, appreciation. If you just said those words and put your hand on your heart for 3 minutes, you would change your vibration for 6 hours. Now they've tested that. So I'm going to tell you they've tested that. But if you did that and just put your hand on your heart and just said gratitude, appreciation, care, love, and compassion, and you did that for just 3 minutes and just said those 5 words, you would change the vibration in your body for up to 6 hours. It's been proven.
Wow. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So bring us right up to date then.
Bring you up to date. Well,
right
up to date.
Where are you today? What are you up to now?
Well, right now I'm in Southern California, where we're getting ready for another, what they call river in the atmosphere to come through, which we've had so much rain and we've had a lot of drought, but I'm not really complaining, but I am a little bit because it's been a lot of rain.
Well, it never rains in Southern California, surely. It's in the song.
I'm telling you, we've had rain. We've had river after atmospheric. They call it an atmospheric river, and it has dumped on California. Literally, and Southern California got snow for the first time a couple weeks ago.
I heard that.
So it's been pretty crazy. But as far as work goes, I'm going to say this to people. It doesn't matter whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether you're a CEO, an entrepreneur, or a business team. To really understand programming is really important, because for a mom of young children, I wish I would have known it when my kids were that young, because there are certain things I would have never said to them that were programmed in me. And so once you really understand how your programming not only affects your children, but also affects you, affects your business team. I mean, for a business team to understand that everyone comes from a different epigenetic background, right there gives you, to acknowledge that, right there gives you the strategic, the emotional intelligence to understand and create a strategy where everybody can work cohesively together. So I do a workshop on this for business teams or for groups, so that they understand how they're programmed, how to understand, to see a program, how to recognize how they can change their program, and I give emotional resilience tools too. But I hope that everybody understands that this programming is in all of us. And you can change it anytime you want, whether you're an entrepreneur, stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, an athlete. For athletes, they have so many blocks of excelling beyond what they can excel. All you have to do is remove the blocks. And so when people really understand that the power is actually in their hands for the success they desire, wow, that alone is empowering.
Absolutely. So how can people get hold of you?
Well, they can go on, my website is janetelaneschmidt.com, so they can go on there. I mean, I'm on Instagram, not that active, but you can say something there. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also, you can email if you want to check into a session or the workshop, you can go to ASST@janetelaneschmidt.com. And if they say that they've seen me on your podcast, I'll give them 15% off. So
wow, that's ever so generous. Well, Janet, that's been really enlightening. I've enjoyed our little chat.
I have too. Thank you so much. It's always an honor to share what I do.
No, it's just a privilege.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.